Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. As a brief introduction, my name's Kaylee, and I'm one of the founders, and I'm the CEO at Blanka. And today I'm super excited to be chatting about a little bit about our journey and how we got here, but more importantly, talking about how we bootstrapped our platform to 1 million in ARR in less than 2 years. Because I know there's a lot of founders or up and coming founders out there who, so often you hear about, how other companies are growing or where they're at, but you oftentimes want to know, like, what are those tactical pieces of advice? So hopefully you'll be able to take a few nuggets away from what I'm going to share today. And I'm also very excited for the Q&A afterwards. So let's get to it. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself before we dive in. So prior to starting my career in the startup world, I actually started my career in consulting. And that's really where I fell in love with technology and how transformative it can be to an organization. After a number of years on planes, trains, and automobiles, I realized that the consulting corporate ladder really wasn't what excited me and lit me up from a career perspective. And so I decided to make my way over to the startup world. And without getting into all the nitty gritty of my startup career, a few notable achievements that I've had is I was one of the founders of a tech talent startup out of Calgary called Mob Squad. Some of you maybe have heard of it. And we did some amazing things there. We were featured on the cover of the Washington Post. There's a Harvard business case written about the company. I was also an executive at a scale up in the e-commerce enablement space, where I helped build partnerships with the likes of Shopify, Wix, and WooCommerce. And during my experience there, I really fell in love with e-commerce and just how interesting it was as an industry and how vast it was. All the while building these tech companies, I also attempted to launch my own direct-to-consumer brand. But it ultimately was really challenging because I had so many obstacles that I had to overcome. I had to go out and source suppliers. I had to order samples and make sure that they were FDA compliant and Health Canada compliant. Then I had to deal with fulfillment and inventory. Needless to say, the process was really time consuming. It was really expensive and it was really painful. And through that experience, it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me because I was seeing from the industry how quickly the beauty and wellness space was growing. And that was exactly where I wanted to build my D2C brand. At the same time, I was seeing all these emerging independent brands capture the beauty industry. In fact, more than 25% of the industry has been captured by emerging brands, but there's no technology enabling them. And so through this pained experience of trying to launch my own brand, paired just with my own background in technology, was kind of a light bulb moment. And we realized, what if we built a platform that made it easy for brands to quickly start and scale a beauty line? And that's exactly how Blanka was born. So Blanka is essentially powering the next generation of beauty brands, enabling anyone to create a line in less than an hour. And we do so through like streamlined platform. It's fully product led. We have no minimum, so a brand can come on, choose products, brand them, and sell them, all without having to touch inventory. So we're making it super easy. A little bit about where we've come from and where we're going. We started the company in early 2020, and during that year we had immense growth. But as you can see from this slide, like, we've had upward growth, but every year it's quite volatile in terms of our year-over-year growth, and that just speaks to the nature of being a startup. But the one big piece I really want to focus on is that A, we had growth, and B, all of it was completely bootstrapped up until mid last year. So we've only really been funded for about 6 months. And so what I'm really excited to share today is how we were able to bootstrap the company to a place where we could raise, frankly, quite a successful round. We oversubscribed, we raised US capital, and now we have the fuel that we need to really grow. So what I want to talk about over the next probably 5 to 7 minutes is how we were able to scale with $0. And so really I want to touch on 4 key strategies that enabled us to do so. The first was focusing on no code or low code MVP. So how to build your MVP with really minimal resources. And for anyone out there who doesn't know, an MVP is a minimum viable product. What's the simplest product you can get to market? The second, I want to touch on non-dilutive funding and how helpful that can be to get your start. Third, I want to double click on growth hacking and how to come up with really innovative ways to get your first few customers. And finally, I want to talk about why it's so important to be a customer obsessed founder. So let's go into number one, the no code or low code approach. So I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to simplify your MVP. All of you founders out there who have ideas, Adam, you're probably one of them, as you alluded to in your stealth mode startup. Take whatever MVP you have and scale it back once, and then scale it back twice, and then do it a third time, constantly pulling back features. As the founder, you're going to have such a massive vision about what you want your company and your platform to be. But you have to be realistic in what your initial MVP beta version of your app is going to be. Low code and no code approaches to getting something to market should be your best friend as much as possible. My advice to you all is to limit where you can the amount of technical development that you need until you can really validate whether or not you're solving the right problem. By getting that initial version of your app or your platform or your website or your product to market, it allows you to iterate really quickly and understand, are the problems that you're trying to solve the real problems that your customers are facing? So I'll share a little bit about how we think about this low code, no code approach at Blanka, even now today when we have a fully baked tech team. We're currently, a little bit about Blanka, as I mentioned, is our platform allows a brand to come on and choose from a huge collection of curated products. They can upload their logo and render the logo on products and then sell those products on their online store through a Shopify or Wix integration. That current process today allows a brand to choose from pre-selected products. So they're called private label products where we've selected the formula and the packaging. What we're starting to hear from brands is that they want to have more control over, their packaging or their formula. So we're in the process of building out a feature very similar to Tesla's website where you can design a car. We're essentially doing that for the beauty industry where somebody can come on and design their own custom product. That being said, I honestly don't know if this is going to be a really successful feature in the app. And I don't want to put my tech team into a 6-month sprint of building it out. And so we're actually going to test out this concept through using a logic-based survey like Typeform, where somebody can come on and answer a few questions and it funnels them down kind of their specific kind of question and answer, choose your own adventure sort of experience. So by leveraging Typeform, we are able to release a really low code feature without building it for months on end. So that's an example of how we are doing this still today. Another example is through Notion. We use Notion to stand up micro sites for our customers, where it looks like we've created this really custom experience for them, but we just use Notion to do so. A few other tools that I'd really recommend around the simplification of your MVP or just the low code, no code approach, taking a look at like Shopify or other e-commerce websites. Airtable is a great one. Webflow is amazing. Zapier is amazing for creating non-native integrations as well. So that's the first piece on simplifying your MVP. Number two, the biggest thing I can emphasize around getting funding is start looking for grants. Grants, and more grants. Non-dilutive funding is frankly one of the only unfair advantages we have as Canadian founders when we're looking at our US counterparts. This is because there really aren't programs like what we have in Canada at the provincial and federal level. And what I can say when it comes to grants is really understand how provincial and federal grants work, along with how the stacking works. When we started off the company, the best kind of point of entry when it came to grants was through salary and hiring grants. That's essentially how we hired our very first employee. This very first salary grant we got allowed us to pay for the first grant we got allowed us to pay for the salary for the first 3 to 6 months. And after that, we had a bit more steam and we were able to find another grant to then continue paying. So that's a great starting point. And once you really get steam and start to have some market validation, there's really incredible R&D grants available. IRAP is one of them, but IRAP takes quite a long time and you need to start to build a relationship early on with the federal government. Further down the line, there's also SHRED, which is actually a tax credit. So kind of sharing a little bit about how Blanka hacked grants to develop an SEO strategy. I'll talk about growth hacking in the next slide, but this was kind of an approach for grant hacking. As I mentioned, the very first grant we ever got was a salary grant to hire an intern. But what was interesting about that grant we got is, in addition to hiring the intern, it also gave us, like, I think it was like $3,000 to do some sort of training program. We were a brand new company, a brand new hire. I had no idea what type of training program would this employee need. And then somewhere along the line, a light bulb moment went off where we realized that we really needed to bake in an SEO strategy into our website because we wanted to be able to drive a lot of inbound traffic. We had no idea how to craft an SEO strategy. We had no idea what keywords we should target, how to write content, how to create pillar pieces. And so I reached out to a friend at an SEO agency and said, hey, would you guys be willing to train our intern on how to build an SEO strategy? With the output being you guys are building out our SEO strategy alongside her. And so through that, we were able to build a really successful strategy that drives a ton of inbound traffic still today. And over the years, we've ranked higher and higher on Google. And so that's how we were kind of able to leverage non-dilutive funding in a really creative way. A few helpful resources that I can't emphasize enough when it comes to sourcing this type of funding. The first is a platform called pocketed.io. It's essentially a one-sided marketplace, I guess, in the sense where you go in and you filter all of the different criteria you're looking for, whether what type of size of company you are, what type of grant you're looking for, and it basically spits out all the grants that you might be applicable for. It also offers grant writing services, and I know there's some founders out there who don't really feel strong in grant writing. The second piece is startup newsletters. I signed up for every startup newsletter I could get my hands on, both provincially, because we're BC based, as well as federally. And I got tons of information about different grants and competitions and awards that were coming through. And finally, other founders. Other founders were so monumental in our growth and still continue to be so, because they are telling me what they're hearing about grants, and they're making introductions, and they're doing so much of the groundwork on their own businesses, and they want to share with each other. So I think these are some really helpful resources when it comes to sourcing out grants. Number 3 is all about growth hacking. So for my personal philosophy is that unless you're a D2C brand, you should not be relying on paid ads early on. You should be thinking about the craziest, wildest tactics on how to scale. And you know what? 9 of them are going to be terrible and they're going to fail, but one's going to work. And then you just repeat that one, and then you test out another 10. And that's exactly what we've done at Blanka. We've never spent $1 on ads. A lot of our growth has been organic, similar to the SEO strategy that I shared. I'll talk briefly about how Blanka found our first customers on Facebook. So when we were building out our app, and we actually did build out an app over 3 months, which going back in time, I probably would have taken a bit of a different approach to no code or low code. But during that time, I spent a ton of time doing research on Facebook and joining groups. There's a ton of Facebook groups with founders who were starting beauty brands, but they were doing it very hands-on, similar to how I tried to build my own brand in the past. And I just started asking them questions and trying to understand what were their pain points. And then I was like, maybe I'm going to start my own Blanka Facebook group, all about launching private label beauty lines, but with technology. And then every night I would spam. Facebook only let me send 100 messages. So I'd spam 100 people in all these other groups, inviting them to an invite-only exclusive Facebook group where they would learn more about successfully launching their brand. And this is how we growth hacked like this pretty substantial Facebook group that ended up being our first beta customers for Blanka once we launched it. And what's interesting is that some of the users from this Facebook group actually reached out wanting to use Blanka before it was even ready. And so I had a couple of them on Stripe subscription payments before there was even an app, which was another light bulb moment for me that made me realize, okay, we can actually launch something without needing a full-blown app. A few other hacky ideas, and believe me, there's so many, these are just a few I wrote down, is other communities like Quora. Going through the communities and posting and understanding a little bit more about your industry. But I would really be careful about Reddit and what you post there, because people can get pretty savage. Another one is building up a micro affiliate program and then reaching out to blog lists and seeing if they'll post about your platform, and in return, you'll give them referral revenue. Finally, another great one is business directories. An example of BC small business has a business directory of all the businesses in the community. by and large, that's not really going to drive customers to us. But what it does give us is a backlink, which to Google considers us to be a higher authority website the more other websites are linking to us. And so there's really interesting ways that you can drive authority to your website and, again, growth hack your way to revenue, or at least those first few customers. And last but not least, I really want to talk about customer obsession, because customer obsession as a founder is your number one job. And by being customer obsessed, you will find product market fit. So the first really big piece of feedback and advice I give any founder is that you should be speaking to customers daily, especially at that first kind of, X number of customers that really move the needle for you. That allows you to really gather feedback and constantly iterate on your platform and then ship new features fast. If you're just sitting, in your office or wherever you're working and thinking about features and creating them and shipping them without actually understanding what your customers want, then you're probably shipping the wrong features. I'll give you an example about how at Blanka we developed a brand development tool through customer feedback. So I mentioned to you that at Blanka, a brand comes on and chooses products and adds their logo to the products and sells them. Well, when Blanka was first launched, that was absolutely not how it worked. You could come onto our platform and you could choose from products, but then you would just have to publish them to the Shopify store. And then we told brands, oh no, when you sell the products, we'll add your logo to it. So they had no visualization of what their logo looked like on the products. And we heard firsthand from the brands, no, we need to see what our logo looks like on products. We need to add these mock-ups to our store so we can start selling them. And so that was amazing feedback for us, where we're like, okay, we need to build this feature into the app. But then what happened is building a feature into the app where we're automatically rendering a logo onto products takes a lot of work, and we needed to really validate exactly how that experience would look from a UX perspective. And so what we did for probably 3 months is it felt like we were adding logos to products automatically, because a brand would upload their logo and we'd say check back in 24 hours. But really we had a person, a remote person, adding the logo to every single SKU. And we had like 200 SKUs at the time. And they were doing it through Photoshop. And so we're doing all this manual low code, no code work to validate that that's how it works. And that's what we wanted to build. Fast forward today, we are now able to run this process in about 60 seconds. But that gives you an idea of how we really hacked our way to a feature that is core to our platform today. A few other really helpful tools that are monumental for being, customer obsessed in your job is Intercom or any other customer success support platform. We love Intercom. I'm not going to lie, it's expensive, but they do have a startup package for the first year where you're only paying about $100 a month. A few others is Notion. We use Notion internally to draft all of our customer support playbooks and processes. And then finally, we can talk a lot about all that qualitative data, but you can't miss the quantitative data. Profitwell or any other type of platform that's tracking your recurring revenue and your subscriptions is really important to see from a high level what's happening on your app. So that, in summary, are 4 key strategies to scaling that we use to get to the point that Blanka is at now. Of course, I could probably go on for another 5 hours on another 20 ideas. But again, I really hope that some of you took away a few nuggets of insight that you can apply to what you're building. And for sure, please reach out to me. I'm excited to do the Q&A right now, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to support and answer any questions.